So, a dispute over who gets to ride a motorcycle first. I mean, it sounds completely mundane, right? Like an everyday, totally forgettable argument between a couple of teenagers. But what if I told you that a singular, highly localized argument escalated so incredibly fast that in less than a week it led to a fatal stabbing, a police encounter, the sealing of religious schools, and literally had bulldozers rolling through a neighborhood? The sheer speed and scale of this escalation is just staggering. To really understand how a micro-level conflict erupted into this macro-level communal crisis, we need to take a close look at the facts on the ground.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really complex and deeply tragic situation that unfolded recently in Kota, Ghaziabad. We are going to look strictly at the source material to trace the intense fallout from a fatal neighborhood dispute. My goal today is to break down exactly what happened, how the administration responded, and how a totally integrated community suddenly found itself fractured along communal lines. So let's step back, look at the timeline objectively, and try to understand the mechanics of this massive escalation.
All right, let's start with Section 1, a fatal local dispute.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the timeline. And honestly, the sequence of events is just rapid. On Thursday, during Bakr Eid, a 17-year-old named Surya Chauhan is stabbed in his own neighborhood of Navni Vihar. Tragically, by Friday, he passes away at the hospital. Then just one day later, on Saturday, the prime accused, a neighbor named Assad, is killed in a police encounter. After that, the administrative response kicks into gear with unbelievable speed. By Monday, 3 local madrasas are sealed, and by Wednesday, bulldozers are raising market encroachments. In less than a week, the entire landscape of this neighborhood was completely transformed.
Okay, so what actually went down on that Thursday? Well, according to eyewitnesses and the local police, Surya and Assad actually knew each other. This wasn't some long-standing gang rivalry. It was literally a spontaneous argument over who would ride a motorcycle first. In fact, the police have explicitly stated that this attack was not premeditated. Now, following the incident and that subsequent police encounter with Assad, law enforcement stepped in and arrested 3 other suspects. They brought in Assad's associates, Farhan and Atif, along with Assad's father, Nawab, on suspicion of involvement. As of right now, a 5th suspect still remains absconding. Now, whenever a tragedy like this happens, you know how it goes. Rumors just start flying. Some locals began speculating about the motive, with a few even suggesting Surya was somehow involved with Assad's sister. But it is so crucial to hear directly from the victim's family here. Surya's mother, Saroj Chauhan, firmly rejected these claims. She said, "These stories are being made up now to target my son," and she emphasized her demand for actual, unclouded justice for her 17-year-old boy. Which brings us to Section 2, the communal fault line.
Almost immediately after the incident, this stark, highly visible divide emerged on the streets. It's like looking at 2 different worlds. On one side, you have Hindu groups flying saffron flags, marching through these narrow neighborhood lanes, chanting slogans, and publicly demanding the closure of local mosques and madrasas. But then, right on those exact same streets, you have a completely contrasting reality for the Muslim residents. We're talking shuttered biryani shops, families staying out of sight behind locked gates, and this deep, pervasive fear that their entire community is facing a collective punishment for the crime of one individual. It's a really sharp contrast that tells you everything you need to know about the tension in the air.
To really grasp the intensity of this backlash, we need to look at the actual rhetoric being used on the ground. Take a look at this quote from Govinda Gupta. He's a member of the Hindu Raksha Dal who was marching in the area. He says, "It is not about one case anymore. Now we have to fight to save our future generations. Every masjid and madrasa here should be shut down. That is where they produce criminals." The critical thing to note here is how, for these protesting groups, the focus entirely shifted away from a localized dispute over a motorcycle and escalated into a broad, sweeping condemnation of local Islamic institutions as a whole.
On the flip side of that, we absolutely have to look at the perspective of the Muslim residents living in those very same lanes. A local chemist shared a thought that perfectly captures this sentiment for a lot of people in the area. You see, they condemn the murder. They are completely shocked by the incident. They even pointed out their support for the police action against the accused. But the lingering, painful question they're left with is, why are they punishing the entire community and treating everyone as guilty? It really highlights this sudden, intense isolation felt by residents who had absolutely nothing to do with the tragic event that Thursday.
Moving on to Section 3, Operation Clean Sweep.
So, the district administration and the police, they launched this massive municipal crackdown. We're talking drones deployed for overhead neighborhood surveillance. They start rounding up local history sheeters, people with past criminal records.
They issue property eviction notices, but the steps that really drew the most attention, for sure, were the sudden sealing of unregistered madrasas and the deployment of actual bulldozers to clear market encroachments. It was a multi-pronged approach that completely altered the day-to-day reality of the entire neighborhood.
Let's zoom in on those madrasas for a second. By Monday, 3 local madrasas were officially declared unauthorized and were sealed up by the administration. One of the main locations hit was the Madrasa Rahmania Arabia Qasamul Ulum. The official reason the administration gave was that the institution was unregistered with the Uttar Pradesh Madrasa Board. So just like that, a place that was a regular center for daily religious education was suddenly locked, sealed, and had official notices plastered right on its entrance.
Naturally, this kind of swift, sudden action caused a massive amount of confusion and pushback from local religious leaders. Imam Shafi'ur Rahman, who's associated with that sealed madrasa, brought up a really practical point. He notes that the madrasa has been operating there for over 30 years. They pay their utilities, their electricity bills. So for him, and for the entire community that relies on the madrasa, this sudden overnight declaration of it being illegal, especially right in the immediate aftermath of a local murder investigation, just feels completely disconnected from standard administrative procedure.
And that leads us right into Section 4, backlash and bulldozers.
You know, the phrase bulldozer action is something we've been hearing a lot in recent years, and it was utilized heavily here. By Wednesday, bulldozers literally rolled into the Kota market to raze shops that the administration said were built over public land. On top of that, a sealed madrasa that was occupying government land in the nearby Mussoorie area was completely demolished. And finally, the 2-story house where the prime accused, Assad, lived with his family was slapped with an eviction notice. Crowds actually gathered around just to photograph the document. The state's response here was highly visible, physical, and extremely permanent.
But while the physical neighborhood is literally being altered, the social fabric is taking a massive hit from some really extreme rhetoric. Tushar Gupta, who is associated with the Rashtriya Hanuman Dal, openly stated to reporters, "We will start tying pigs outside our houses to keep these people away." This kind of blatant intimidation, using religious taboos as a weapon, out in the open, it just shows the absolute severity of the divide happening in this neighborhood. It is a drastic, heartbreaking shift from neighbors just living side by side.
And finally, Section 5, a fractured community.
When you step back, the story of Navneet Vihar is one of just incredibly drastic transformation. Think about the past. This was a place where Hindu and Muslim families lived door to door. They shared walls, they shared staircases. It was a place where local teenagers, kids like Surya and Assad, would hang out together in the market for hours. But the present reality, it is drastically different. Today, it's defined by shuttered shops, freshly washed streets where a tragedy took place, and armed police literally guarding corners with rifles slung over their shoulders. The everyday, integrated reality of Kota was torn apart in a matter of days.
I want to leave you all with a really profound thought from a 60-year-old local resident we heard from as they were leaving a local masjid. Looking at this entire rapid escalation, going from a fight over a motorcycle all the way to the systemic sealing of institutions, they asked, "Is this what justice has become in India? Judgment based on religion?" It's a really powerful question. It makes you think about proportionality, about collective consequences, and the way local administrative actions can get so deeply intertwined with communal tensions. It challenges us to look closely at how a micro-dispute can be utilized to ignite a macro divide. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep asking the hard questions, and I'll see you in the next one.